Good morning, everyone. We are waiting for my very esteemed guest, Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, who's going to teach us all about the new thinking when it comes to skincare. He is joining us via Zoom, and I should have him with me momentarily. Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Dr. Thomas Hitchcock is joining us from where? I don't even know where you are physically.
Right now, physically, I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Oh gosh, so you're hotter than we are. So,
Yeah, it's pretty bad out.
yes, well, I am so thankful that you could join us. We love to bring the newest and the best information to our patients and to many of our followers on Instagram. So, thank you again. I have had a delightful weekend. This is how I spend my weekend. I was reading and underlining and highlighting all of the important facts from a great book that you wrote together with Dr. Doris Day, who, of course, as our followers know, is a fantastic dermatologist in New York City and such an expert on skincare as well. But I would love to know, before we talk about some of the important facts in the books, a little bit more so everybody knows about you. I've learned a lot about you, but I would love to know your trajectory to Crown Lab and how you've come up with this idea of BioJuve, and before BioJuve, obviously, before the therapeutics came into play, about Biome. So if you wouldn't mind telling everyone, your journey to where you are right now.
Okay, yeah, so I'm a geneticist formally. That's what my doctorate is in. I study DNA damage and repair. That's what my dissertation is on. And interestingly, even before that, I was studying microbes in the sense that I used them as model systems for the different research that I did. So uh, when I was doing my doctorate, which was at Clemson University, one of the model systems was a bacterium called Deinococcus radiodurans, which is what we call an extremophile. It can live in pretty much anything you throw at it. And yet, while you can shatter its DNA, it still lives. It still, is able to propagate and be relatively mutation free as far as bacteria go. And I wanted to know why. It has very similar repair enzymes as humans and such. And so that really got my interest, or at least my attention, that microbes are not as primitive, I guess I would say, as people make them out to be, that there's a certain function that they carry out in this world that humans, we can't do ourselves. And part of the book that you read, there's a whole chapter where we talk about the history, and that people have thought themselves smarter than nature in trying to make germ-free animals and humans, and finding out that we can't function as well without the microbes. And that's where the term, the holobiontology, which is what I call myself, a holobiontologist, which I believe is kind of a made-up word, but holobiont is not a made-up word. That really describes looking at complex organisms like a human as an integrated ecology, kind of like, so basically it's not just the human, it's also all the symbiotes that live on the human, and that comprises actually one kind of superorganism, or a holobiont.
Yeah,
And
I think it's fascinating, and I love the story that you bring about the bubble boy. We've all
Mhm.
watched the movie, and that makes it so clear that obviously we have to live in the world that integrates. You cannot live free of germs.
Mhm.
So do continue on. Tell us a little bit more about these specific organisms that we all have growing, and how many are there, and which ones are the important for us to know about?
Mhm. So when I wanted to do my postdoctoral work, I did two postdoc, well, kind of one, kind of two. I did at Duke and then Yale universities. It was the same lab, same professor. We just changed universities, but it was interesting at both. And then I did my fellowship at Walford Medical College in New York City, and it's there that I left academics and went into industry. And one of the things that I found was that in the dermatology industry, there's this kind of holy grail of trying to get what we call actives into the skin to penetrate the skin. The problem is that in order to do that, in order to get something to penetrate the skin, which is made to keep things out, we have to actually compromise the skin. And so there's lots of ways that people try to do this, and each way pretty much causes some problem, some by doing it. And so what we do is we end up having to put huge amounts of actives in order to get any of that in, and that causes problems also. Right. And so my thought was, well, can we not use the human microbiome, the symbiotes that live in our skin, as a way to actually kind of a Trojan horse type of scenario where we could put the medicines in the bacteria and the bacteria live within the skin, so you don't have to worry about passing the barrier because it lives inside of that barrier. And so in 2012, we started to see a huge boom in metagenomics happening because new technologies were coming out that were allowing us to look at not just identifying species of bacteria, but actually the subspecies or strains of bacteria. And one of the biggest things that came out of that, and the thing that turned on the light bulb in my head to start this particular path of research, was that there was one particular species that is well known, used to be called P. acnes or Propionibacterium acnes, and now it's called Cutibacterium acnes. And what in 2012, this one particular lab at UCLA described was that not only is it found on people that have acne, which is what people thought caused acne, or one of the major culprits of acne, but it's found on everybody. And not only is it found on everybody, it is the predominant species on the skin. And not only is it the most prolific microbe on the skin, but it's found more in people with normal, healthy skin than in people with acne. And so that's when I said something's not right about what we thought we knew. And then I found out through research later on, especially when I'm writing the book and such, is that in atopic dermatitis, C. acnes is not present. In psoriasis, C. acnes is not present. In actinic keratosis, C. acnes is not present. And now we talk about whether that's correlative or causative or whatnot. But the point being is that it opened up this whole floodgate of possibility, because now it's like we thought we knew this person, this C. acnes person, and we don't know them because it's not just a person, it's a whole country. And each individual strain has to be studied. And we actually took years to quantify and qualify the best strain. And that's what we ended up with when we formed BioJuve.
So it's interesting from a clinical dermatologist perspective. Of course, we all have understood that there's got to be a perfect balance on the skin. And when things are out of balance, whether that's created extrinsically or intrinsically, things are not working quite well. So with acne or acne rosacea or eczema, as you've mentioned, the whole approach of the old days, so to speak, when patients were told that, well, diet doesn't create any issues. This is just kind of one of those things, that's on its own. Yes, you can and should strip every bit of oil on the skin. We're learning so much that we now understand that the way that we thought about how there was an interaction between the gut and brain and the skin, now it makes such perfect sense when it comes together. So I'd love for you to make a comment about this, because we see this in clinic, whether it's the stress level or the inappropriate taking care of the skin really contributes to it. So understanding this microbiome is really, in my opinion, changing the idea of how we should be taking of our complexions, whether it's from a pathology standpoint or something that I talk about every day, the anti-aging approach.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the way I would or what I would comment about what you just said is, when people want to call BioJuve a microbiome skincare line, I say, no, it's not. It's not even a skincare line. It's a skin biome care line. And the reason I make that distinction is because you can't just add the microbes onto the skin. You can't just add the active ingredients onto the skin. You have to, in order for the skin to properly function, you have to have what you call the balance, right? And part of that balance is having the right microbes, but it's also your body creating the right environment so that those microbes actually function in a symbiotic way. What most people don't realize is that microbes are not static, meaning they're not always producing the same things. they produce things in response to what food's available, what conditions are available. And so if you are putting them in a position where they don't have the resources they need to function properly, a lot of times they have mechanisms that, like a back door, to actually survive with something that they don't prefer. And sometimes when they do that, they metabolize things that our body doesn't like, and it becomes this vicious cycle. And an example I give of this is that the sebum that your body produces, the oils, like you said, people are trying to wash that off, they're trying to blot it off, they're trying to get it off. When we're actually doing something different with BioJuve, we're actually putting hundreds of millions of microbes that eat that oil. So it's about saying, okay, if you have the food source, rather than get rid of the food source, let's add the microbes to eat that food source and produce all the healthy molecules, because all the research we're showing is giving us this insight that what they're metabolizing are things like short chain fatty acids, like propionic acid, that actually our body has receptors for and is super good for us. There's a lot of things that those receptors can do to actually not only reduce the signs of inflammation, but aging as well.
So
and then
talk
all
a
the
little bit about
antioxidants.
these, talk about a little bit about these good things that this whole biome approach really produces, you know, and how they relate to dealing with pathology. I mean, you know, we always used to laugh, you know, you're stressed and you're eating high processed foods. Of course you're going to break out. Now we get it. So let's talk about the good stuff that these bacteria, because it's still, most patients, when I tell them this is going to be good, they're like, we don't want any bacteria on our face, you know. So
Well,
we
you can't
have
get
to get
away.
it. Yes.
Yeah, you can't get away from bacteria. They're everywhere. When you're breathing in bacteria.
Yeah.
When you're walking across the room, they're falling on you all the time. When you eat food, there's tons of bacteria on there. And it's not just bacteria, there's also fungus and there's viruses. And people have this misconception that we are able to sanitize our lives. The fact is, there's nothing about the world that's sanitary. Now, that doesn't mean you should go and there are pathogenic microbes out there that you want to stay away from. But the majority of what these microbes do is keep us safe from those microbes. And so by getting us too sanitary, we end up ruining our defense, our shield. And you mentioned the gut, the brain, the skin, the axis. And the fact is, if you think of your body almost like a house, and it's a bit of a reductive analogy, but it's a simple one, where you have the skin, which is like the outside of the house, and then you have like the gut, which would be like the walls on the inside of the house. But there's in between the skin and the gut, there's a whole array of things, and they actually talk to each other, and they talk to each other through the immune system. And so when you eat something, that's why when you eat something, you can have a breakout, because your body is then the microbes in your gut are producing certain things that cause the immune system to react in your gut, and that goes through your blood to your skin, and then your body's going to react similarly to other microbes. And so and it happens the other way as well. So this is where most people, they have this misconception that germs are bad, and that's why we start the book out by saying, what's a germ? Like, is a germ a pathogen? Because there's tons of stuff that aren't pathogenic that are germs, or people consider germs. So that's where, really, it's a re-education process.
Right. So
Because
I
we've
think
all,
if we remind everybody what are the great things, that are produced,
oh yeah,
because there are number of them that you mentioned in the book, and
sure,
I
sure.
think that they're so important to highlight.
So the number one thing that I think is the most important thing that the microbes of the skin do that we just have forgotten or just didn't know is, one of the things that dermatologists especially are huge advocates for is sun care, right? Staying out of the UV light, protecting.
Right.
Well, one of the ways in which UV damages us is through the production of free radicals. And so that's why some antioxidants are really good to be put into your sunblocks or sunscreens and such. And so one of the things we found out is that the C. acnes that we've been trying to kill for 50 years actually the number one protein it produces is called ROXP. And ROXP is a very potent antioxidant. It's just as potent as any vitamin C that's on the market, but yet it's being produced all the time by these C. acnes microbes. So if you have a healthy strain of C. acnes, it's going to be producing this this scavenger of free radicals, this antioxidants, which will protect you not just from pollution, but from even UV radiation and such throughout the day. So the more of these you have, the more C. acnes are secreting, the more ROXP they're secreting. And we found in our own lab that it's not just ROXP, there's other antioxidants as well. And then there's the short chain fatty acids like propionic acid. Propionic acid and things like butyric acid, these are the things that they turn lipids into, these microbes. And they actually end up as huge anti-inflammatory molecules. We have receptors in our cells that basically allow this molecule to tell us to calm down. And we have what's called T cells, T regu cells. And T reg cells are what tell us what kind of not to attack and what to attack. And part of what is satiating those is these short chain fatty acids, both in our gut and on our skin. So there's a plethora of things that are secreted by these microbes, but it's not just what they're secreting, it's what they're not secreting too. So specific strains of C. acnes secrete what's called a porphyrin. And porphyrins are what, when you put the Woods lamp on, you can see the little glowy dots. And that's why blue light is effective for treating acne, because the blue light causes porphyrins to become free radicals and it kills off what's ever around it. Problem is, you don't want a lot of free radicals on your skin. So what you do is you want C. acnes that don't secrete porphyrins. And it turns out that the healthy strains don't really secrete porphyrins.
That's fascinating.
So you can use the blue light, get rid of the bad ones, and then curate the good ones, and then you don't have to worry about it.
I think that the applicability of this approach is so broad, and I am a self-professed skincare junkie. I handpick certain things, and most of our patients do already have some treatment, whether it's for acne or for other skin conditions like eczema. So one of the things that I have been talking with our patients clinically is how do we incorporate this topical regimen into a pre-existing topical regimen? And you talk very eloquently about this in your book, that no, you don't have to throw everything away. You do have to be fairly conscientious how you combine these things. But I would love for you to, let's kind of move towards the therapeutics. So there's really a good understanding of how these products can be incorporated into daily therapeutics.
Yeah, so part of the issue is that most of the products that are on the market that are consumer products, they have a list of ingredients, but they don't have the formula. And that's like going out to a restaurant and seeing the list of ingredients and getting a meal and then it coming out and assuming it's healthy based on the list of ingredients. The fact is, you could have zucchini bread and you have a zucchini by itself, and one is healthy, one is not. One is junk food, one is not. And so in our skincare arena, we have thousands of formulas that have vitamin C in them. But that does not mean that they're all good for your skin. The fact is, there's a lot of stuff that's put in as filler because one company needs to differentiate from another company and they need to differentiate from another company. And so you end up with this huge inky list of things that you don't need on your skin. And the other thing people don't realize is that all these things are chemicals. And just because vitamin C, I'm using that as an example, but just because vitamin C is good for you in itself doesn't mean that when you mix it with a bunch of other things, it's still good for you. It might end up being bad for you. And so chemistry is something that most companies use in the sense of they know how to formulate to keep it stable and all that, but not necessarily knowing how now those things interact with the human biome, not just the skin, but the microbes on the skin and how those affect each other. And so I like to tell people when you that's the reason why with BioJuve we made a self-contained line, because it takes the guesswork out of it because they're all compatible. We've tested them and formulated them to be compatible. Are there other products out there that are compatible? Absolutely, I'm sure there are. The problem is we don't have access to the formulas of all the other products on the market. So you have to look at certain things like the preservative systems. So preservative systems are mostly trying to kill or stop bacteria and fungus from growing. So you do have to find a way to, if you're going to still have an aqueous formula, to put a preservative that's not going to kill it, but will still control growth and contamination in that formula. Hard to do for consumer, but hopefully the
Sure.
companies will catch up and
Well,
help us.
and I have brought, these are, it seems like this is the most important ones. This is the activating mist and the essential serum, which to
Yep,
me, I think are the heart of the therapeutic line.
they are.
And I think it's a good reminder that with these active ingredients, when the skin is prepped, so not over exfoliated, not over cleansed, but appropriately prepped, particularly with the cleanser that the company has put together, and then the serum is applied and then activated. The best time to do this is at nighttime.
Yes.
Is there a particular reason why?
Yeah, most of it was because when I was working with my team to formulate how to bring the zycrobes, the actual microbes, and put them into a formula that was going to be shelf stable, we had to use an anhydrous formula because you have to keep them away from water until they're ready to be used, and that's what the activator mist is. It has arabinose, which turns the genetic switch on, but it also has water and an emulsifier, so you can actually break up the oil, get the water to the microbes, and rehydrate them, so you can bring them out of hibernation. The problem, though, is that because it's so lipid rich, it could be a little bit shiny on the skin. And so we felt that people may not want to be as shiny during the daytime. And it actually opened up an opportunity because at night, you don't do anything else. You're not going out, you're not sweating, you're not, so you can stick your microbes on, let them do all the magic. I call it microbioforming during the night while you sleep. And then you can wake up the next day. I don't even wash my face in the morning because I have no reason to. I do in the shower, let the water run over, and then I, dry it off. But I don't use any soap on my face, any cleansers or anything, because there's no reason to.
Right.
And part of what people, I think, will come to find is that when you let your body do its own self-renewal, it'll be healthier. And so part of that is stop washing so much. You don't need to be washing that much. And wash like the makeup. We actually didn't even make a balm because we found these microfiber cloths that can take the makeup off really well. And then you just do a little extra with the cleanse, the conditioning cleanse. That's all you need because you do not want to be stripping off layers of oil and the microbes on your skin. And we have found that that is partially why BioJuve has been so successful clinically.
And where do you see the most success? Is it in treatment of acne or rosacea or anti-aging, or what are we getting excited about?
Well, you put me in a bit of a pickle here because as a representative of the company, I can't disclose that a cosmetic line of products can be used for therapeutic purposes. So that being said, we can only make the claims that are used in marketing. What I will say, though, is that C. acnes is a powerful organism. And we have just touched the tip, the very tip of the iceberg of what it can do. And we are in the background doing research on how we might use microbes of the skin, including specific strains of C. acnes, to fight things like psoriasis and eczema and maybe even acne. And these are things that we've seen great promise in. And I can't speak much more than that because of contracts and stuff, but
But
I'll tell
one
you, it's
of the
very exciting.
requests that I'm already getting, requests, quote unquote, is for a body lotion, that could be used indeed for conditions like atopic dermatitis and eczematous dermatitis, and I think that would be an interesting product to bring to the market. I use BioJuve myself and don't find that you use a lot of it, so you could probably spread it out on the body, not just the face. But I think it would be a great one to include as well, maybe in the future. So I think in essence, to me, it's such a change thinking, and I like approaching things holistically. I like the connection that we make clinically between our lifestyles, and is it fair to call these, because we're trying to find verbiage that patients in the rooms click with, if you may. Would that be fair to call this a probiotic in a sense for the skin?
I think it would be fair to call it that. The reason I don't typically call it that is because that term has been kind of bastardized over the years. A lot of the terminology like microbiome technology has been bastardized. Like, to be quite frank, you could put water on your skin, that's going to affect your microbiome. You could put moisturizer on your skin, it's going to affect your microbiome. So anything can claim to be a microbiome technology, and that's the problem, is that there's companies that are trying to jump on this, buzzword or these buzzwords,
Right.
and it really muddies it for everybody else. So the answer would be yes. I would think that the Zycrobes in BioJuve would be, the first, if not one of the first legitimate skin probiotics on the market. Whether other people will follow, I hope so, because the whole reason I do this is because I want to see us do better for ourselves and for the people that we see in our clinics.
Well, I love that. And what a great message. And I feel like we just touched the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. There's so much more research to come. I am very excited about this line. I always look for something interesting that expands our understanding and different approach. I feel like I've learned lots this weekend, and we will put a little summary. And we are so excited about this product. We actually made this a doctor's choice for this month. So our patients and all of the patients can try this. I think it's been a great addition to our topical routines. And I agree with you. I think that, I love that we have incredible scientists like yourself that supports us in the clinic. And I thank Dr. Doris Day too for putting all of these clinical stories in the book. Such a pleasure to chat with you this morning. Thank you so much. I know that there will be questions coming in, so please don't hesitate to direct message both of us, and we will answer to our best abilities. And Dr. Hitchcock, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Appreciate that.
All right. Pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.